when they are doing projects, right? They're looking at real estate, especially if they're doing any sort of build.
Hmm.
You have to make sure that not only is your GC have people, but their subs that are identified and have people. Because what we see is sometimes they're like, hey, I got 4 bids and this fourth bid is so much cheaper. I'm going.
Hello, you're listening to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, presented by Brandon Elliott. This show will be going over all aspects of real estate investing and is intended to educate, motivate, and prepare you to take action on your first or next real estate investment. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone, to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Brandon Elliott, and we are seated today with Gary Eastman over in the Kansas City. Been doing surety bonds since 2008, two different companies. Surety Bonds is one of them. The other one is...
Yeah, so it's Swift Bonds and Access Surety. So they're both in the same industry, just kind of do it in slightly different ways.
Okay, cool. So slightly different. What's funny enough is that we've actually worked together in the past, which I just came to awareness of this once I saw your name. I was like, I think this is the Gary I've worked with in the past. You've helped me out on getting some bonds ready with the city for ground up construction, which is awesome. And we are moving and getting some traction there, which is great. But overall, you know, you guys are an essential piece here because you're getting a ton of data nationwide from different developments, construction, and also the service industry of, you know, plumbers, contractors, you know, electricians, so forth, to be able to see really have a strong pulse on the economy, the market, where we're currently at. And that can help make data-driven decisions, which is very, very important for our listeners. So appreciate you jumping on today and sharing your wisdom with us. For anybody out there that doesn't know who you are, where you're from, your background of like how you guys got started, do you mind giving that 30,000 foot view for the listeners?
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, Gary Eastman with Swift Bonds and Access Surety. Strangely enough, I am an attorney by trade. And so I've been a practicing attorney for almost 30 years now. And so was doing tons and tons of different, you know, big clients, you know, big law, and then decided, hey, I'm tired of not talking to people. So I started doing some estate planning, at which point then I'm like, oh, you do probate along with it. And when you do probate, there's something called a probate bond, which is I file an estate, I need this bond. So after doing a bunch of those, I'm like, well, why don't I start my own bonds? Which that's how it led me into surety. So set up an insurance agency so we just do the bonds, and then all of our contacts, you know, said, hey, well, we need these bonds too. So we started doing bonds, mostly in probate to start with, so court bonds. And then that led into contract bonds, which are more on the construction side. And then finally, something we call commercial bonds, which are really just for licenses and permits. That's more of a smaller deal where we kind of, our big focus is on the contract bond side, you know, allowing people to bid on projects, get awarded projects, you know, make sure that they due on time, things like what you did, you know, subdivision bonds in order to, you know, build up and make sure that the cities get everything that they need.
Yeah. So talk to me, you've been doing this since 2008. It sounds like it just kind of took you down one step after another down this rabbit hole of helping out a lot of people now. But what are you in all markets? And for anybody that doesn't understand truly what a surety bond is, do you mind just breaking that down in a different way or different terms for people? I don't want
Absolutely.
it to go over their head and then us go too far into it.
But yeah, well, see, nobody knows what surety bonds are, you know.
I know I did.
The people that are listening to this, you know, will know more in 30 seconds than 99% of the population. So we've been doing this since 2008. We do it all across the United States. What a surety bond is, essentially, it's a 3-party contract. And what it does, it's between, you know, the principal, what we call the obligee and the or the surety. So what happens is, let's say you're a construction company and you enter into a contract, you bid on a job with the government, right? And then you win the job and now you've got to do the job. What the bond does is it guarantees you're going to do the contract on time, pursuant to its terms, and then pay all material vendors and any subs. So what happens is, instead of a guarantee, right, which means you have to have a dispute that's resolved, in a bond situation, it's a 3-party contract. So if the school is unhappy with the general contractor, they don't have to go directly to the general to solve the dispute, they can go straight to the surety and say, hey, they've missed their time deadline or there's a problem here. Then the surety can get involved. The reason you do that is you don't have to go through the court process and spend a couple of years before that guarantor comes into play. Instead, it's like, hey, let's go straight. What this does is it allows, especially governmental entities, which are required to have it under the Miller Act, to know that projects are going to be done on time and not caught up in 5 years of litigation, any sort of problems. It's like, hey, things are usually on the government side pretty time sensitive, like a road. You don't want a road, under construction for 5 additional years. School, you kind of have to have them. Yeah. So that's why they do these bonds.
So Gary, talk to me. So for anybody out there that doesn't know, say it does take longer because things happen, right? If it does get off track, then how does the surety bond, what does that do? Like who's protected? Is it more of an insurance thing that jumps into play?
Yeah. So if, let's say, for example, you're building that school and the school district goes to the surety and says, hey, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
So the surety can do one of two things. One, they can pay the amount of the bond, which almost never happens because, if you're halfway through a project, you don't want to pay the full project amount. Typically what happens is they say, hey, first of all, is it a valid claim? Sometimes they're not, or they can get it resolved.
Sure.
But let's assume that it is. Then the surety's going to get one of their other contractors, that they've worked with to come in and finish the job. And then of course, if there's any overrun, say for example, it's a $5 million job, but it ends up that it costs 5.5 because they had to get this extra contractor. Then they would look back to the original contractor for restitution. But from the school's perspective, it was done according to the terms of the contract.
Okay. So it's kind of like an accountability individual, almost the surety, but also steps in if needed to make sure that the right people start getting the overall job complete and in a new timely manner.
Yeah, there's some side benefits to it is, the school knows that if you're being bonded, then you're financially stable because you're being underwritten.
Sure.
Because, surety bond underwriters are super conservative. They're way more conservative than bankers.
Really? Wow.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I passed the test then, huh?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on top of that, if it's a bonded job, typically there's liquidated damages if you go late, right?
Yeah.
So if if you have 100 days and you start having a $1,000 fine per day after that, you got to make sure the bonded job gets done first, which is what everybody wants, right? And then, of course, everybody, they are assured that everybody gets paid, so there's no litigation or problems. So it seems like a way, it seems more expensive, right? And in some ways it is, but that guarantee is worth a lot. So delays, you don't have litigation, you don't have liens, and instead things can get done. So that's the government side. You now see a lot of private jobs that do the same thing because they see the benefits as well. Get it done on time, make sure that, business is out. Because if you're a business, right, the real cost is not, it costs you an extra whatever dollars. It's, I was out of business for 6 months while this was being done. Yeah. That's the real cost. So you want to be in moving your business forward. So that's why that little, premium amount is well worth it for most people.
Yeah. And what should somebody actually anticipate or expect? I know the dollar amounts, it could be all types of, it's insurance to another degree. So what is average or typical that you normally see or a wide range that people are getting bonded?
Yeah, so for things under, like $1 million, 3% is a pretty standard amount.
3%.
Once you go over that, it really starts to come down. So down to 1% for really, really large jobs or contractors that do tons and tons of works, it's way under 1%. So, for example, highway guys that do these jobs, that are just roll, well, their premiums are very, very low. Think less than 0.5%. Because they just do so many. And the risk is super, super low. But for everybody else, percent, for the normal small guy, 3% is a good rule of thumb.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so when there's more credibility and projects that have been done in the past, as well as certain dollar amounts, once it gets kind of outrageous out there, then it starts coming down a little bit.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. talk to me, a lot of this that you guys gather because you see day in, day out. How many roughly, surety bonds are you guys doing per year, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. In the thousands.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's cool behind that is you get a lot of data all, over so many states nationwide throughout since 2008. That's a lot of data. And the economy, changing economics, so many different things. It's great to be able to have a good, strong pulse on that so that you can see what is kind of trends going and you can help make data driven decisions, right? So what have you guys seen with the data overall for construction, development, or just the overall service-based industries?
Yeah, great question. And so you're exactly right. We get data from tons of different companies. We tend to see issues earlier on because of all the different clients that we have. And we break it down into a couple different things.
Sorry to cut you off here, but how early do, approximately are you seeing things, do you believe? Is it a few months or like 6 months?
Yes, 6 months to a year typically.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to start blowing you up, calling you more. Like, hey, what's going on here? What do you see?
Yeah. So we break it into different pieces. So you've got, commercial, which I branch in a couple different pieces, and then residential.
Okay.
And we don't see as much on the residential side, and I think you can see other marketplaces that deal with that. So
yeah,
we don't focus on residential, but we do see some issues as they crop up. Normally, where we see issues on the residential is we see residential builders jumping into commercial, which tells us, hey, there's a real problem here. Yeah. There's just no demand for services. For example, in Texas right now, you see that, we've seen that for a little while. We saw Arizona when it was starting to crumble, things like that.
Yeah.
The things that we see a lot of are material problems, right? So we knew that there were going to be material shortages when it came to like roofing.
Sure.
Prior to everybody, experiencing that. And so we had to tell all of our clients, hey, you can't build in flat fee pricing. You've got to build in escalators as that, because we see that it's coming off. And so we did that for our clients so we didn't have claims.
Wow.
Ones that didn't do that had real issues because, roofing a few years ago went from here to here overnight.
Oh, yeah.
We think that they will have roofing problems again here starting this year as California's rebuilding comes really kind of into full swing, because there's still a slight shortage, not a lot. So right now it's basically even, but Florida and North Carolina and all of the hurricane rebuilds are kind of taking up the most of that supply. If California comes on in any sort of significant demand over this year, we think that will create some sort of supply issues.
What would there be a strong demand for here in California?
From the fires.
From the fires. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And, it's not it's not like you're rebuilding an entire city, but you have your normal demand.
Yeah. It's
and then when you just layer it on top.
Oh, yeah.
And quite frankly, I don't think the California fires would have had any effect, but we had 2 major hurricanes on the East Coast that we're still working through.
Yep.
And so that's an issue. Yeah, exactly. It's just you can't stack things over and over until it finally, creates an issue. Other things we see are labor problem. And so that's area specific. And so one of the problems that we see is that we have labor leaving the market.
In what sense?
Okay. So I don't care which side of the political spectrum you're on. Okay. The simple truth is we have stopped immigration as a country for the last year and a half. So a lot of that's gone. We are now deporting people. So that's parts A and B. But you add that on top of the fact that you have more people leaving the workforce than joining. Yeah. And the trades are being affected as well. You put all that together and we were already in a labor shortage. You just layer that on top and now we're in a significant labor shortage. You don't see that changing for a long time.
Yeah. See, it's a very good, obviously, data point, but it's, seeing the younger generation come up, there's less individuals that are like, hey, I want to do some blue collar work. I want to get my hands dirty, roll up my sleeves. I want to do this. They want to kind of do some higher level. They want to be an entrepreneur, a business owner. They want to do some some other things. And so it makes it a little bit difficult for this industry. And I think it's going to be a while before AI gets in there. So there's, still somebody needs to come to the house, do the plumbing, the electrical. There's a lot to be said there. And you're right. There's people leaving and there's barely any actually joining. And so that's a problem.
Yeah, and it's been a problem a while. We've made up for that problem with immigration. Now
Sure.
that spigot has been turned off, at least in the short term, we are seeing the effects of that. And so one of the things that we actually do when we talk to our clients is we make sure that they have dedicated crews, that they're not just bidding on projects and hoping to hire later. That
Yes.
worked, prior to COVID. It does not work anymore.
Not now. No.
Yeah.
You could be waiting a couple months afterwards. That's not good.
Yeah, and to your clients, right? That's one of the things is that when they are doing projects, right? They're looking at real estate, especially if they're doing any sort of build.
Mhm.
You have to make sure that not only is your GC have people, but their subs that are identified and have people. Because what we see is sometimes they're like, hey, I got 4 bids and this 4th bid is so much cheaper. I'm going with them. And I'm like, be careful because, if they don't have people, they may take an extra 3, 4, 5, 8 months, 12 months.
Because they're doing it with just 1 or 2 people when you need a team of 10,
Right.
Yeah.
Or their sub is gone. We actually had something here locally where GC was in trouble because the sub that they've used for 25 years just disappeared. Right. Now, it could be for any reason, the speculation is immigration, but it didn't matter, right? They were out. And so their projects got delayed. There were bond claims. So that's one of the things that for your guys, like, hey, if you're going to build something and make it, for example, let's say you're building just an industrial warehouse.
Yeah.
You just want to make sure that they have those people identified. And if they do, great. But if not, do you want to take that lower bid, save yourself 10 grand, knowing that you may have a year delay?
Yeah.
That's
I like it. What other solutions? Like what else can somebody do outside of just, kind of over communicating, right? Being fully transparent and making sure they are being aware of the people situation there. Is there anything else that can be done? Anything else that comes to mind of like, how can we solve this problem and get more younger generation or people excited about these traits?
Yeah, I think from a community perspective, having more people that go into the trades early on, and quite frankly, where I think people struggle is they think entrepreneur and now it's AI. Well, think entrepreneur and HVAC.
Yeah.
Go set up your own HVAC business. By the time you're 25, you've got a steady client base. Now you spend your time, hiring folks and making them do the work and you doing some things. There's so much demand that the biggest, constraint that we see for most of our clients are people, right?
I love that.
You can solve people, then suddenly you're an entrepreneur.
Come on. Yeah.
And
it's always a people problem. It always is. And it's sometimes the simplest things are right in front of your face. And it's a opportunity. If you want to call it a problem, whatever. It's an opportunity that can be solved. And you can still be your own business owner. You can still you can still jump into that leadership role. And within a few years, you can have a thriving business because you're really making a huge impact with such I wouldn't call it a dying industry, but a less getting overflowed industry. So great opportunities in there. I love that. Very good.
Absolutely.
Talk to me. What does the future look like for you guys, and how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can get a hold of us by visiting our website, swiftbonds.com and access-surety.com. That's AXCESS-surety.com. The future for us is we are trying to continue to expand to help out clients. What we do is a lot of education on where you are, where you go, how you can bid, and then, provide insights on the industry that we see. What are good things? What are, places where it's very super, super competitive versus where it's not very competitive. So, and then we help them out with, how do you bid and what projects are better? When do you bid? For example, we have clients that only bid in the last half of the year because the margins are higher as compared to everybody that bid in the first of the year to kind of, fill up their book.
Yep.
Things like that, risk issues that we see, get ahead of it so that that doesn't come back to bite people. And then helping them out with just the basics of how to grow, how to increase. Same with us, right? We use, technology to help try the things more streamlined. Our specific goal is typically how to make things easier for our clients, because they don't see bonds as a, major part of the business. They just see it as a necessary evil. So we say, hey, we work with you to do all the hard stuff on this side. You focus in on project timelines, management, materials, getting it all done. Because what happens there is, they're able to do good work, and get more and more business, both from word of mouth as well as, bidding on projects.
I love that. Gary, when it comes down to the future right now, is there any areas where you guys have been seeing a trend last 6-12 months outside of what you already discussed that, the listeners should be aware of in these spaces? And how do you feel about the economy in the future?
Okay. So I'll try to break this down so it makes sense, because what we see is we believe we've been in a recession for the last 2 years. The only reason that the official government data doesn't show that is all the AI investment. You strip that off, boom, we've been in a recession.
Yep.
We believe that 2026, we're going to start coming out of that.
Really?
Just from a organic demand. It's demographics.
Sure.
We have some things that weigh on that from a, debt perspective, all that stuff. But we believe that 2026, at least from an economy perspective, we're going to start coming out of that recession. It's not going to be like the straight, hey, everything's great.
Yeah.
The stock market may go down, but the economy will be slowly getting better. We think that interest rates will not improve significantly over our lifetime. So
over our lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a couple of scary things. We believe inflation will continue to increase.
Yeah.
We think we've entered into a small bump for the last couple of years. I'm right. I spawned up by low. It will go up and remain up. Everybody just has to get used to that and start doing things that make that as part of their life. How do we build in inflation as it comes along? Now that's all the scary stuff. The good stuff is we see opportunities basically everywhere now. Because we're coming out of a recession, we see a lot of places that are going to be growing. And this is almost completely across the United States. Residential, Florida, Texas, and along the southern states really is going to remain tamped. But we think that commercial is going to be doing well if over the next few years it's going to be on the industrial side and not on the Class A side. So Class A commercial real estate, we think will continue to struggle for the next few years. We don't think there's anything anybody can do about it. There's just more supply than demand. However, on the industrial side, we think that demand is not only growing, it will continue to grow, both from things like logistics or simple warehousing for, your HVAC people. All the industrial side we see as a nice growth pattern and will continue to have significant demand, at least for the next decade.
Okay, awesome. Is there any examples that you can give of why you believe that economy is going to start picking up a little bit, or some of the scary things that you're mentioning, if you don't mind me asking?
Absolutely. So quite frankly, it's more of a demographics issue.
Yeah.
We have we have a lot of people that have left the economy as they've retired and not enough people join. Well, that's caused a lot of issues, supply, et cetera, of labor. Sure. But we have a lot of young people that are entering into or have entered and are continuing to enter into jobs, starting to have families. That builds demand, right? So currently we've tamped that down because they haven't been able to afford housing. But that number just keeps growing and growing and growing. That demand keeps growing and growing and growing. That flows across the entire United States. And so we believe that, plus, all of the industry that's come back to the United States in the last few years as they're fleeing China, because, China's just exploding in cost. You can only bring it to the other countries so fast. The United States is the only, the Western Hemisphere is the only place that can handle the demand. We just can't bring it back fast enough. Yep. So there's all this demand that will be through the Western Hemisphere essentially over the next decade or two, as the industrial base is being built back up.
Do you have any feedback or opinion on tariffs and how that may help over time or not?
Yeah. So tariffs are a tax, right? And so it creates a short-term, bump in revenues, then bump of, lowering demand.
Short term though, right? How long is short term? Because some people might think like, hey, why isn't it done yesterday?
Yeah.
Not that short
Yeah. The answer to that is
for the short term bonds.
in the short term, it's only a small amount. Quite frankly, we think it's irrelevant in the long term.
Okay. Yeah. It'll actually serve in beneficial in the long term or kind of just neutral. Doesn't really matter.
I think it's neutral in the long term.
Yeah. Okay. And then you mentioned kind of like a scary part. What was it? It was something
probably about the speed in which we can reindustrialize the Western hemisphere. And the problem here is, we relied on China for so long to be so cheap with the making of goods.
Yeah.
That it's hard to replace that as quickly as we can. Now that they've aged out of that super cheap path, it makes it very difficult for everybody to make that work, right? And so we are trying to reindustrialize as quick as possible. Our infrastructure is not there. And so it takes 5-10 years to get that done. We're trying to do it as fast as possible. Quite frankly, we think tariffs did not help us with this.
Yeah.
I would disagree with the administration's position here. I understand what they're trying to do, but quite frankly, I think it just created a headache that we didn't need. And, companies are already in the process of doing this. We'll continue to be in the process of doing this because we need to get away from, China, just pure demographics. And then, of course, Mexico is now, cheaper, better for goods anyway. So we're trying to move it back as fast as possible. We just don't have the time to do it at the speed of which, everybody wants it done.
Sure.
But we need that. So we think it's just a simple demographics issue.
Yeah. But you do believe rates will stay the same and throughout our lifetime. And so that's something that a lot of people, I think, need to hear, right? Because there's so many people out there still waiting on the sidelines for, obviously, there's plenty of people that are just out of the market because of affordability, but there's plenty of others that they're still just waiting for rates to come lower. And I think we got spoiled for too long with rates being at 3% and so forth, Will we ever see that again? You're predicting that the rates will stay kind of where we're at, which is roughly around 6% or so right now. So
a good way to think about this is we believe that rates will remain for the typical person will remain where they're at or higher. We believe that the government may get lower rates, because they'll try to manipulate the rates for themselves just by printing money. But everybody that's investing just I believe needs to say, look, we're going to have 6% plus going forward.
Yep.
You won't get better. You need to make your decisions based on that. So there are a lot of wins that we had over the last 10, 15 years due to really low rates of people making a lot of money and like, hey, this is easy.
Yeah.
Well, now we got to go and figure out, do a lot more due diligence. What's making money? Why? How can this be consistent? As we say, get away from Class A, at least in the short term, as that, there's too much supply and not enough demand there.
Sure.
But we think on the industrial side, there's, a little bit of due diligence goes a long way, and suddenly you can have this really great cash flowing business on that side.
Yeah. So the learning lesson here for the listeners is like, hey, stop waiting on the sideline. If you're doing your due diligence today, and if you believe that there's an opportunity and you're underwriting for your interest rates to be at 6% plus, be conservative, and you're not hoping and praying for interest rates to come down to 3% again. Like that may never happen. Gary's projecting or believing that it's going to stay the same. And I can agree in many different ways. So take action now, because the time is now, and there's opportunities that are right in front of you that you could be missing out on. So anyway, Gary, I love this. I appreciate you tremendously for jumping on today. It's so funny that, right when we're about to record, I'm like, hey, I think we worked together in the past, and you guys were awesome. My experience working with you guys helped out tremendously. And I want to thank you for that. I don't know how we originally got connected, and maybe it was through a contractor or the city or something, but you guys are the leading in nationwide for surety bonds and doing a damn good job out of it at it since 2008. So thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for coming on today to be able to pour into our listeners and get the data points out there. Anything that you want to leave with the listeners?
No, just thank you so much for having us on. And you're right. Take action, do your due diligence. There's a lot of opportunity out there.
Come on. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. Reach out to Gary and connect with him if you have any questions, if you need any support, if you need some surety bonds, he's the guy to go to. So if you guys want to connect with me, you can always do so on Instagram. It's Brandon Elliott Investments. Otherwise, our business page, Credit Counsel Elite on Instagram. If you're looking for funding and want to learn how to get up to $500,000 with rates as low as 0% and something that could be repeated every 6 months per person, we can teach you how to talk to the banks properly, get up to 90% approval odds, the highest limits possible, as well as the best terms and conditions. We got some training on that and some content you can check out on our website, creditcounselelite.com, www.creditcounselelite.com. And afterwards, you can book a call with us or simply check out our free training coming up. So with that being said, appreciate everybody that has already subscribed. If you have not already, do that right now. Hit that subscribe button to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast. You'll get the newest notification every single Monday after listening to a few episodes like this one. Leave that 5-star review. Appreciate you guys. Love you guys. And share this out there. We'll catch you on the next episode. Till next time, God bless. Gary, thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, brought to you by Brandon Elliott. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Also, please don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. Thanks again for joining. Until next time, God bless.